Now may I invite our guest for the day to speak about his book. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin, I'd like to thank my dear friend and Chief Secretary, Rajasthan, D.B. Gupta. We now go back exactly 36 years since we met, and we have kept in touch. He's such a gentle human being, apart from being a great intellectual and a very passionate civil servant. I'm sure the state is blessed by his benign presence and his extremely benevolent attitude to work and committed to public service.
I'll agree with you.
Thank you. I'm equally enamored by the presence of very senior officers like Mr. Srivastav, the senior-most in the cadre, Mr. Govind Sharma, who has very kindly spoken so highly about my book, energizes me tremendously of the several things that he mentioned, and the extremely august audience which is present here, and I see a lot of people standing here. It's a joy to be back in Jaipur. I've been here several times. My hometown, Narayana, is not very far from here. I left this place long back, 61. I started living in Delhi, and since then I'm living there. Now, to get into the book, this is basically an experiential book, and therefore it's different from many other books. My 35 years of work in the government, the distilled essence of that I've tried to put in the book. I worked in 5 union territories and 2 big stints in the government of India. 7 years in the Department of Defense and 7 years in the Department of Commerce. Since the last 7 years were in the Department of Commerce, the predominance is of issues relating to foreign trade. Foreign trade is inextricably linked to infrastructure, to finance, and therefore you find 12 chapters on finance, 11 chapters on infrastructure, 9 chapters on foreign trade, 9 chapters on science and technology, because I'm very passionate about cutting-edge technologies which are disrupting the whole world today. Then there are about 5 ideas each on retail, ease of doing business, India's global role, agriculture. And the remaining 15, 16 subjects that are covered are education and health, telecom and energy, railways, civil aviation, and tourism. There's somebody from tourism sitting here. I have put 3 very practical ideas there. Rural development and environment, women, sports, food and housing, media and entertainment, and there's something on law also, a chapter on litigation. The USP of this book is that, as the Chief Secretary mentioned, each idea is just about a page and a half. You go to the content, select the ideas you like, and read them. You don't need to read it from page 1 till the last page. And I don't expect the book to be read like that, because it's a very serious book, and I don't think anyone can start from the front and end at the last page. So just pick up what you like and read, and I assure you, I promise you rather, value for your time, your effort, and your money. Now, people ask me, how do you view this book? So there are 5 dimensions which I'd like to enunciate here. This will give you a complete idea of how I view the book and how I project this. The first thing that I'd like to mention is some of these ideas are brand new. You will not see it anywhere else, because this has been culled out of my experience. There are ideas on glasses for the blind. So today a blind person at $10,000 a spectacle can actually read through magnification of images. Over time, I'm sure the price will come down. It will become affordable for everyone. But today, a completely blind person can read. It is possible today. Similarly, no shoe fits anyone. Shoes are never made for each person's size. So there's a chapter on customized shoes. Exactly to your size, the shoe can be made through 3D printing. There's a chapter on lab-grown diamonds. Jaipur is famous like Surat for diamonds. There's a chapter on lab-grown diamonds where diamonds are created in the laboratory indistinguishable from natural diamonds. So you can actually go to the shop and buy a natural diamond. It may be a lab-grown diamond. And I believe some imposters are actually doing that. But there are technical machines which can identify which is a lab-grown diamond and which is a natural diamond. Public land inventory, the Chief Secretary of Rajasthan is mentioned. When I launched the book in Jaipur, the Chief Secretary of Chief Secretary of Gujarat in Gandhinagar, J.N. Singh, also my batchmate, he touched exactly on the same thing. And he said this is very, very important. He's also doing a lot of good work there. The most important subject, which is absolutely new, is about monetization of temple gold. This is a subject which I will dwell at length about 5 minutes later, because this, I think, is an idea which has value worth $25 billion. And $1 billion, as you know, is 7,000 crores. It's a very important idea. I'll dwell on it a little later. The second dimension is some of these ideas have far-reaching consequences. There is an idea on use of sovereign wealth funds. Your Rajasthan cadre gentleman and our batchmate Subhash Chandra Garg, who's the Secretary Economic Affairs, I discussed this idea with him. He pointed out that you mentioned only $7.5 trillion is the size of the sovereign wealth funds. Actually, it is $81 trillion. 81 trillion. A billion has 9 zeros, a trillion has 12 zeros. So $81 trillion is what he was saying is the size of the sovereign wealth fund. The idea discussed in the book is that if we get a minuscule proportion of this fund also for infrastructure development, India's entire infrastructure needs can be met. Then there's an idea on facial recognition technology. All major technologies, we credit US for it, but in facial recognition technology, China is the leader today. And there is a company there which is already worth $3 billion because of the cutting-edge technology which they have mastered. There are two ideas which I'll discuss along with temple monetization in a little time. That is rooftop solar, which I believe has tremendous potential. And the other is cross-subsidy in education, a pioneering experiment done in Bhubaneswar, which has not been paralleled anywhere in the world. 25,000 paid students are cross-subsidizing 25,000 free students in Bhubaneswar. I'll discuss that. The third dimension is some of these ideas have tremendous value if they are adopted seriously. Like Mr. Govind Sharma mentioned about the Global Happiness Index, there is also a City Livability Index and a Global Consumer Confidence Index. So if these three indices are adopted in our country, that would be very useful. The fourth dimension I want to talk about, and I'm very happy about this once the budget was announced a month ago, was that 4 of these ideas have been picked up in this year's budget. This book came out in December. I had an occasion to give it to Subhash Chandra Garg at that time, and he is the architect of the budget, and 4 ideas I found were resonating in the budget. I'll quickly dwell on that. I had suggested that income tax should be exempt up to 5 lakhs of rupees for everyone. What the budget has done is it has tweaked it and said income tax exempt only for people who have income up to 5 lakhs. So if you have more income than 5 lakhs, then you will be taxed according to those brackets. But the fact that from 3 lakhs we went straight to 5 lakhs was very heartening. The second thing which I had suggested was that there should be pension for the unorganized workers. I had suggested in my book that the employer of the unorganized worker must put in 100 rupees a month and put it in a mutual fund for 10 years so that you get approximately 8 to 9% returns to the unorganized worker. The budget has tweaked it to say that the employer will not pay, the worker himself will pay 100 rupees a month, and the government will equal that amount, another 100, so that the kitty is twice that amount. But unfortunately, the budget doesn't talk about putting that money in a mutual fund. I think it is slightly conceptually, it may not work as well as I expected it to, because if you put it in a mutual fund, the compounding value of money will ensure that after 10 years, the unorganized worker gets a decent 7, 8, 9% return. The third idea was about Jan Dhan accounts. We have 30 crore Jan Dhan accounts. But unfortunately, 6 crore Jan Dhan accounts, 20% of them have no cash in them. So if you have a Jan Dhan account without cash, it has no economic value. So what I had suggested was that these Jan Dhan accounts must have some liquidity for financial inclusion. What the budget has done is that it says for next 3 years, every year 2,000 rupees will be put in the farmer's Jan Dhan account by the government. Now, if this account goes to Jan Dhan accounts which don't have money, then it will be a value addition. So my purpose of mentioning this was all Jan Dhan accounts must have liquidity. Through this method of DBT, if this can be achieved, it will be extremely useful and it will lead to financial inclusion. The last point that I had suggested was that our country must, ISRO in particular, Indian Space Research Organization, must become a launch pad, a global launch pad for satellites all over the world. Now, the budget does not talk about this in the main budget portion, but in the vision statement, for the first time it has been introduced, a vision statement in the budget. It does talk about India becoming a launch pad for world satellites. The only point I'd like to add here, which is not found mentioned in the budget, is that we need to do a demand estimation study of the total number of global satellites which can be launched from India, and then create the capacity to do it, because this can be a great revenue earning exercise for the government and ISRO. I'm also happy to bring out the fifth dimension, and the fifth dimension is that since I wrote the book in May 2018 and it got published in November 2018, which is not very far, at least 7 ideas I find through the press have been acted upon to a very large extent. One of them is 5G adoption. I had suggested that 5G should start by 2020. I find a flurry of activity going on in the Department of Telecom, and I'm quite hopeful that 5G basically will make your smartphone 20 times faster. Just imagine, 20 times your present 4G phone will become faster. It will change life, it will disrupt life very, very significantly. As it is, the 4G smartphone in the hands of young people, millennials, is doing wonders, and they're doing all kinds of things with this. 20 times faster will revolutionize life. Secondly, I had suggested renovation of our 263 dams in the country. I read only last week that the World Bank has given a huge grant to do this, and therefore I feel very satisfied that this will now see the light of day. I had written about Chabahar port in Iran, and I find the first consignment has already started last week, so I'm very happy to report that. I had suggested about a drones policy, a policy for making drones and flying drones and operationalizing drones. That has also been done about a couple of months ago. Then I had spoken about modernization of railway stations. I find Varanasi has turned out to be an exotic railway station, better than many airports today. And J.N. Singh, my batchmate in Gujarat, was saying that Gandhinagar railway station will equal Varanasi very soon. So I'm very happy to see that. Finally, I had mentioned the Nirbhaya fund, which was created after that incident in Delhi, of 1,200 crores, was actually lying unutilized in many parts of the country. Here again, in the last 6 months, I find a lot of activity going on, and I'm quite sure now women will feel safer with the use of these funds for their protection. Mugdha told me that I must talk a little bit about the ideas that would be relevant for Jaipur. So quickly, I'll run through a few things that I had penned, and then I'll get into 3 ideas in more detail. Among the ideas in the book which I have not mentioned, ones which would be very relevant for Rajasthan in my view, is the constitution and the operationalization of RERA. I think it is not yet fully operationalized here, if I may be correct. Oh, you have done it, okay, wonderful, wonderful, great. Second, I have mentioned a policy on foreign tourists. For the first time, we've touched a figure of 10 million tourists in India, foreign tourists in India. I've touched upon a policy, I'm sure you'll like that, and there's a lot of scope for 100 tourist destinations in India to be properly, to be equipped with proper infrastructure so that we can double, triple this. Small states like Singapore have 3-4 times this. I've spoken of aircraft charters. I worked in a place called Lakshadweep. Every day we had to transport somebody who was having a medical problem all the way to Kochi in a helicopter 400 kilometers away. So aircraft charters today from several places in the Middle East, in Andaman Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep Islands, and remote areas of several states would be useful. Historical heritage I had spoken about. Rajasthan is home to the most precious historical heritage, and I think that would be useful. Customer service centers, Chief Secretary has already spoken. Akshay Patra Foundation I had spoken about, that has huge scope, and I'm sure that will be taken. They're working here? Wonderful. And the last thing was the digitization of media and entertainment. That also has tremendous value, and I'm sure that will happen. Now, let me just quickly touch upon 3 ideas which I think have tremendous value if they are operationalized. India imports about 600 tons of raw gold every year. 600 tons of raw gold is worth $30 billion of foreign exchange. At the same time, in our country, if you look at the 100 top temples of India, over centuries, we have collected, and there's a written report on this, about 1,100 tons of gold. Some of these 100 temples that I'm talking about, and some of them are in Rajasthan also, get a donation of 1 crore every year, and about 10% of that is in gold and silver. So every year new gold is getting accumulated, and the entire accumulation of already existing gold is about 1,100 tons. Now imagine this stock of gold is lying in the vaults of the banks or the temples without converting into a flow. So it has no economic value. As long as it is a stock, it has no value. The moment it becomes a flow, it attains value. So all I have suggested is set up a 4-member high-powered committee chaired by Additional Secretary or Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, with a member from SEBI, RBI, and SBI. And their task would be to talk to each of these 100 top temple trusts and convince them to part with 5 tons of gold every year in exchange for either the government gold bonds or cash. As a result, what will happen is the stock of gold will get converted into a flow. The import of gold of nearly 500 to 600 tons will stop, and we will save valuable foreign exchange of $25 to $30 billion. Now, this is a doable idea, but there's only one challenge. The temple trust will say that the income tax authorities will come after us and ask us what is the source of this fund. Now, if prima facie we agree that a temple gets gold only or through donation, then obviously the income tax angle doesn't come in. So basically, I've spoken to the Additional Solicitor General who was present in my book launch in Delhi, and he says one small notification can be issued by the Ministry of Finance saying that the source of this will be donation and it will not be questioned. You will find 5 tons of gold flowing from these 100-odd temples every year, and 500 tons will come. And it's not that it will not get replenished. As I mentioned, a lot of gold is going into the temples every year. So that stock will also get replenished, and there'll be no danger to deity of gold belonging to the deity getting taken away from the deity. So there's no spiritual or sentimental angle to it that will be left. The second idea which I wanted to discuss is rooftop solar. So far, we have achieved 850 megawatts in this whole country. India is the only country which gets 10 months of sunshine throughout the country. There's no other country which is endowed with solar energy to the extent that we have. 99.9% of the buildings in India don't use rooftop solar. Now, if you look at the scope, and our target, the government target is 40 gigawatts of solar energy. Now, if you look at bus stands, railway stations, ports, airports, commercial office establishments, farmhouses, temples, schools, colleges, universities, Army, Navy, Air Force complexes, each complex is 1,000 acres, you can well imagine the total potential of rooftop solar that can be generated. In one town, the Ministry of Urban Development had done a study, that is Varanasi, and the potential was 676 megawatts, just one town. Multiplied by 6,000 block headquarters of India, each having a population more than 50,000 to a lakh, and you have a stupendous figure of rooftop solar. I am targeting a doable figure of 1 lakh megawatt, and if you bring in 1 lakh megawatt through solar energy, which is now costing the latest tender 2.42 in Gujarat, you have solar energy cheaper than thermal energy. So if this is the transformation in costing, we can do without any kind of nuclear energy, which is the costliest, and any kind of thermal energy, which is the most polluting, with the safest and cleanest solar energy. And I'm sure the cost will go down further as the cost of solar panels goes down. In Delhi, Jamia Millia College is fully working on solar. In Kochi, the international airport is working fully on solar. So it's not that it's not possible, it has been done. And my batchmate in Gujarat, Chief Secretary J.N. Singh, says that he is tendered for 5,000 megawatts of solar already. So the fact is that if one state can do that, and Rajasthan is also blessed with huge sunshine, you have great potential. Acha. Wonderful, wonderful. The last point which I wanted to mention was about cross-subsidy in education. I had been to Bhubaneswar to the Kalinga Institute of, it's called KIIT, Kalinga Institute of Information and Technology, which is run by its founder Achyuta Samant. It has 25,000 students, all disciplines, medical, engineering, MBA, you name it, all the disciplines are there, 25,000 paid students. Adjoining that is an institute, again run by him, called Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences. 25,000 students studying from KG to PG. Food, clothing, shelter, everything, and absolutely free. Now, here is an experiment being done by him where 25,000 paid students, the surplus generated from them, is used to cross-subsidize complete free education, boarding and lodging, for 25,000 free students. Both campuses next to each other. Now, this is an experiment which several Nobel laureates have come and seen, because it doesn't exist anywhere in the world. In the best of universities like Harvard, where the corpus would be a few $1 billion, they don't have any free education for anyone. And here, a person using every bit of the surplus generated from paid students is using it to fulfill the needs of the poor students. All these are tribal students. So when I saw that, I asked him, why can't you replicate it in other parts of in Orissa? So what he said was that the capital cost, the capex, is about 20 crores for 1,000 tribal students, and the operating cost, OPEX, is about 5 crores. So I said, that's not a very big amount. We have MP Land scheme, we have corporate social responsibility, CSR funds available. So if we target just 1,000 SC/ST tribal students anywhere in the country, the capex comes to 20-25 crores. In a place which has more building cost, 30 crores. And the OPEX would vary from 5 to 10 crores. And in a year, 1,000 students can study from KG to PG absolutely free. Now, this is an experiment which requires a lot of guts, it requires a lot of attention, a lot of willingness, but this is something which can come true. I thank the Chief Secretary for his very kind words and all the ideas that he has discussed in the book, all the distinguished panel which has praised my book. And I assure you only one thing. If you read the book, I promise you value for your time, your effort, and your money. Thank you.